It's Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs. Let's start the show with Lewis Tennant. Here we go. Guests and interviews that you're looking for with creators, innovators, and so much more. For all episodes and further info, verbalhighs.com is the place to go.
Alrighty, welcome to Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, a podcast podcasted weekly from a kitchen bench in Kingsland, Auckland, New Zealand. My name is Lewis and I am the host of the show, aiming to bring you a hand-picked guest each week from either my life and the people around me, or plucked from the popular culture landscape. This week's guest's a bit of both. Someone I've developed a close friendship with over the past few years, though I've known in one way or another since probably those magical teenage years, roughly fifth form onwards. Mr. Leon Dahl. I'll get to him later on. We need to get through a few items on the agenda. Firstly, the homeless guy. Well, I don't know he was homeless, actually. I don't know that he was homeless, but he was certainly asking for money. This is not a story to slight the plight of those less fortunate. I'm quite the opposite in my perspective. It's more about how people can't all be lumped into the same basket. I went to McDonald's for the first time in living memory. Bit of a rush schedule to get to work, and I went, where can I get sort of a package of sort of the caffeine and the thing with the egg and the other thing and a little bit of that, and McDonald's. Okay, go in there easy, all in one package. And I sat there with my whatever it was and contemplating life, the universe, and everything. Deep thought about the workday. In one of those slightly self-doubt kind of headspaces. Anyway, I was deep in thought is the punchline of that. And a guy came into the McDonald's and came up and asked for some money, and I thought privately inside my head, as thoughts generally occur, I'm not sure about this approaching people while they're actually dining in a business. A little bit of a violation of something. But I politely said, look, I don't have any cash, as a lot of us don't these days. I didn't have any cash. I mean, I had money, but I didn't have cash. And those guys don't carry zip zaps or the modern equivalent. There's no wireless FPOS, so I politely said that. And then his demeanour immediately changed, and he said, "But you can afford a fucking coffee, can't you?" And walked off. Lovely start to an already slightly emotionally fragile day. I was attacked. I was attacked just going about my business. But then I went home to my nice warm flat and had another meal and all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? There might be a Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs live show coming. I'm working with Hallertau Brewery. Shouts to Dave. Shouts to their delicious beer on a wee project where we might end up in a theatre of sorts with a variety of guests and some visual content too. So Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs hopefully hitting the road, well, driving up the road and going live from a venue. So those of you in Auckland, I will be in touch with further details. To my guest, Mr. Leon Dahl. As I say, someone I've known for many years. Always very much like the man. I think he took longer to come round to me than I did to him. But then when we really first started to acquaint properly, I was in a kind of manic, confused, and quite lonely phase of my life. Tail end of living in Wellington. My father had appeared in my life, turning up to my flat on Cuba Street, fresh out of a latest long lag in prison. I had a kind of a strange thing going on with a degree of fame in a small town via being a breakfast host and so on. And so I was just a bit of probably an annoying mess around a number of people I met at the time. But through mutual friends who other people I've reacquainted with from that period of time, Leon and I have struck up a friendship. As I say, he was at my 40th, and we have a great chat about music production. He talks about being tarred by the grunge brush in the 90s, which made me think about a great quote, something Craig Terrace, renowned Wellington musician, once said to me about when the electronic music boom hit Wellington in the late 90s. He said, "Lewis, playing a guitar at the time was like having AIDS." It also made me think about a tried and true Generation X test. Are you Generation X? Well, if you have an opinion on grunge, then 9 times out of 10 you are. We also talk about the world's slowest rebuild of Offender roads. We talk other kind of gear boffinry. Then we move on discussing a bit of pop culture. Something I already knew that comes through in this podcast, people who already know Leon and people who are about to be introduced to him, is he has an infectious laugh. Just lastly, I have to renew the website subscription for next year once I've got through a year of these shows. If you are a regular listener, this is more, it's not about the fact I can't afford it. I mean, fuck, I can afford a coffee. It's more about the fact that I want to see whether we're a community, listeners and host, or whether I'm maybe just a service. There's a donate button on my website. It's always been there. I would get lovely feels from gaining the financial means via listener contributions to pay for next year's web subscription. When E.T. came out on video, I went to United Video on Courtney Place, and they had VCR copies of it for rent for one night for $10, I think in the 80s or early 90s. So if you can throw $10 my way for a good few hours of entertainment, that'd be lovely. And as I say, it would be a morale, not a morale boost, but it would make me feel like this thing is worthwhile, as I say, as a group thing. Okay. Like the show at Verbal Highs podcast on Facebook, or just search Dr. Tennant's Verbal Highs, or at Verbal Highs on the Twitter. Verbalhighs.com is the website, /donate or whatever it is, if you want to go there. And subscribe on iTunes. This is Leon. Kia ora, kia ora, kia ora.
Verbal high straight down from up above.
I think that whole range, I mean, obviously that's the granddaddy version.
The older series.
Yeah, but I think all of them I've come across, for what they do as an all-in-one solution, I think they're pretty good discs, man.
Yep.
I've got to introduce you. Do you feel any trepidation at all?
No, it's just well, no. I mean, we've talked so much that it could just go in any direction.
We've already done 20 minutes. My guest is a musician, DJ, vintage synth collector, high-end product buyer for the Rock Shop.
Yeah, high-tech product buyer.
High-tech product manager. And according to your LinkedIn, you have very little internet trace, by the way. So I had to resort to LinkedIn. Also, Guru.
That's right.
Guru, Leon Dahl. Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Shall we start in the 90s?
Yep. Which part of the 90s?
Well, I don't even know, because I was probably just audience then, whether you'd even remember me from high school. I don't know if we ever talked, but I do remember you being on stage in the band.
Yeah, I think I remember you coming to one of our band practices once.
Yeah.
We shared a practice room with some Wellington cheerleader squad or something, and so we'd practice there, Wednesdays and Fridays, and they'd do Tuesdays and Thursdays, and
5, 6, 7, 8, 1, 2.
And that was pretty cool. And I guess the 90s for me, it was the 90s of two halves. I had long hair and played in a rock band for one half, and then had no hair and started DJing and producing electronic music in the other half.
How did the Fat Mannequin thing come about? Is it that like school band turned? It would have been, you would have been just pre-Rock Quest, right?
Yeah, we in '92, Onslow College. My friend Jeremy and I, we started playing. I started teaching him how to play guitar, and then we bought a couple of electric guitars, and then started a band and enlisted Jacob and Dan and Bill, and yeah, we. Yeah, it was just sort of a college band at first, but then we took it pretty seriously, and we gave that a good nudge for 5 years.
Was it 5 years?
5 years.
92 to 97?
Yeah.
That is a total guess.
Yep.
I'm good for dates.
Yeah.
How far did it go?
Well, we did. We produced one of Wellington's first independently released CDs in '94. And we did an album with Hark Records in '95, '96. We did lots of touring, played with a lot of New Zealand bands, played with, She Hard, Supergroove, and all of those sort of people. Did a couple of music videos, played mountain rock a couple of times, did international supports.
How did you guys sit somewhere comfortably enough to do Supergroove in one show and She Hard in the other? I suppose they're both they got rock elements, right?
Yeah, I guess, who was it? I think it was Mike Houlihan said it was full tilt grunge boogie.
So there was already a bit of disco in there then.
Yeah. And that
Was there?
Yeah, well, that was Dan, the bass player. He was huge into slap bass and Flea, and so... But, we're sort of into a lot of funky stuff as well as the standard Master of Puppets back and Metallica back catalogue and stuff like that.
How did you guys miss Rock Quest? I'm sure there was one in 92 or 93. It was one of the first ones.
We were in 93, and
Yeah.
I think we were the first band to go on, and I think we're generally Rock Quest, if you're in the first three bands, you're condemned never to
Why is
play.
that? You mean of the night?
Yeah, 'cause nobody remembers you,
Surely the judges, it's the judges' decision.
Well, we just went it. Well, we'd done a couple of local talent quests, and we won the Onslow College talent quest, so we thought we were quite good. But then that was actually the same year that Aaron Tokina was in it, and they came second. And
I have a weird, distinct memory of this guy. I had no idea who he was. Another school kid. I think it was Foot Up on the Foldback doing Perfect Satriani or Hendrix or someone.
Yeah. Pride and Joy they were called. It was
Nine Eye College.
Yeah. And they were amazing. It's like, holy shit. And so, we did Rock Quest, and it was fun. I ended up doing a lot of helping out with Rock Quest at that in the years to follow, by helping out on stage and getting bands on stage. And we toured with the Rock Quest one year and as Fat Mannequin and played while all the judges were deciding. And so we would sort of, would help tech it, but then be the band, almost like a success story of college bands, because we were still at high school at the time, I think, or just out of high school.
I think it was 90. Not this is highly unethical. I think it was 96 or 97. I hosted the Wellington finals, and we smoked in the wings at Smoke Free Rock Quest. But that's a very 90s thing to do. You clear the building now. There might have been liquor in Coke cups as well. So what happened to the rest of the band? Have they still pursued music?
Yeah. So Bill, he still plays. He's plays his acoustic guitar a lot. And so Bill and Jacob, the drummer, they still do band stuff down in Wellington. Ed, he still plays bass. He still had a band. I can't remember, Elephant in the Ocean, maybe. I can't remember what they were. Jeremy, he's over in UK, but he worked for record labels for ages, and he went to Australia and worked for record labels and did some pretty impressive stuff. Started, I think, at Shock, and then went into some of the big labels. And
I bumped into Jacob, I'm pretty sure, a few times in Melbourne. He was living there for a while.
Yeah.
So he's back now.
Yeah.
Familyed up.
Yep. Twins.
Did you cop shit when you cut your hair off and decided to go raving?
Well, not so much from them, but Jeremy and I, we were sort of, after the band started experimenting with, I I guess I was right into electronic stuff like Nine Inch Nails, and I was keen to buy keyboards and samplers and start experimenting with that sort of stuff in a band context, and there was sort of a folky shift and.
A folky shift?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, I guess, in the late 90s, it was sort of grunge wasn't so cool anymore, and we didn't necessarily think we were such a grunge band at that time, and our music had changed a lot, but we still got tarred with that grunge brush, and we tried to reinvent ourselves by trying some different music and stuff like that, and it wasn't that fluid, and so we decided that we'd rather sort of still be mates as opposed to try and reinvent ourselves and end up not liking each other.
It's very mature for, 19 or something?
Yeah, 19, 20, yeah. But then we started, a few of us started doing some experimentations with drum machines and keyboards and stuff. And Jeremy, the other guitarist, he was, sort of getting into other electronic music as well, Chemical Brothers and Prodigy, that sort of thing. And it was really sort of drum and bass that was my first real electronic music.
How does it having dragged out to a party or something?
Well, Jeremy was listening to a bit of it, and then I remember going out to the Phoenix in Wellington. Can't remember what it was, but it was. I remember going to some drum and bass gigs, and I remember going to see Christian Vogel live, I think, as well. Some of these, and they would have been 97, 98.
A Leon Baldock party, maybe?
Oh, Christian I can't remember. Christian Vogel, no, that was Lawrence, I think.
Right. I've put my gum somewhere.
Under your chair.
It's probably for the best. Okay.
I remember just started buying synthesizers and.
But where do you just casually start buying synthesizers in Wellington in the late 90s?
Well, I met a couple of guys.
Still pretty guitar-heavy stores, right? I suppose it was changing by then.
Well, it wasn't from stores; it was just through mates, really.
Oh, right.
So when I was working at the rock shop, still, selling guitars, really, and then because I was always recording, I was in a recording studio since the age of 15 or 16, and was really comfortable with all of that equipment and was doing recordings for bands. I started doing all the high-tech work that way, really, at the rock shop. And just meeting customers, and there were a couple of these guys.
So you were already working at Rock Shop, and you were finding customers that had gear, to get rid of.
Yeah,
I've often wondered about that, man, because New Zealand's way smaller population than we had really prohibitive import laws around the time of legendary drum machines and so on and stuff. I mean, how much vintage stuff was there in New Zealand? Because there's got to be a pool of stuff to start with, right?
Yeah,
there wouldn't have been much around, would there?
Well, people used to go on pilgrimages to schools and junk
churches
shops
and stuff.
Churches, you got it. And there's all these stories of folklore of finding some old Juno in a school music lab, and it's like, oh, that
in
old
Warkworth.
Yeah. I never had such luck, but
you found something on the street though, didn't you?
Yeah, Fender Rhodes.
How did that happen?
Well, that was one of my synth spies down in the Manawatu. I got these synth spies, and he rang me up one day and said, "Leon, there's this Fender Rhodes and cash converters in Palmerston North. They want like $1,500 for it, but it was the suitcase model, which is the harp, the top, and then it's like a speaker cabinet which it sits on top of." And speaker cabinet's got the power supply in it.
So it was half the
the Fender Rhodes.
Yeah.
And so it doesn't work without the power supply.
Yeah.
And so we hatched a story to go in and break it to cash converters that this thing that they've got priced at $1,500 is not worth that.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work without.
But you didn't hatch a story because it's true.
Well, it is true. So I ended up getting it for a song and shipped up. And then a couple of years later...
this is so weird.
A couple of years later, my spy got into a conversation with a guy who was the previous owner of this Fender Rhodes. Yeah. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I had it in my garage, and I was taking it to the dump, taking it to the tip. And I couldn't fit it all on the trailer, or I could fit the speaker cabinet on the trailer, but not the actual keyboard. So I left the keyboard on the side of the road outside my house and took the speaker cabinet to the tip. And when he came back from the tip, it was gone. And somebody obviously drove past it and saw it and said, "Sweet ads, I'm off to cash converters." But then years later...
Hang on, finish it. Sorry to break up the story, but why was he taking it to the tip?
God, I don't know. It was this old antiquated keyboard he was going to throw in the landfill.
And your synth spy somehow knew him as well. I'm curious. So years later...
And then years later, a third person came in into the equation who had this speaker cabinet that he found at the tip.
Through another spy? No.
No, same person. He's well connected in Palmerston North. And the speaker cabinet didn't have any speakers in it, but it's still got the frame. And so years later, this came back to me as well.
So someone found the frame at the tip and squirreled it.
And pulled it out, yeah.
And just kept it for 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and said, "Oh yeah, I've got this thing for a Fender Rose," because the guy in Palmy restores.
And then
Rose.
how did you fix the guts of it?
It's got no guts, so it's just a.
Is it just an ornament?
Well, the bass is. I've got it in storage, but I had a custom built power supply for it built in America, and even
so it does play.
So now it works and it's fine. I've got a Fender Rose, which is great.
What else is the holy grails of the collection?
I got an ARP synthesizer. It was called an Avatar, which was a guitar synth. So you plug a guitar in it and play a synthesizer from it. And that came to me. This guy found it in under his granddad's bed or something, and it was all rusted through. It didn't work.
Hang on, so it's got keys, and you play strings and play the keys as well. I don't quite get that.
It's like it's a synthesizer with no key.
No key, just synthesize the module. Yeah.
And it's big, and I thought, wow, this is good. That would make an awesome coffee table.
Yeah.
And so I bought it off this guy and threw out the guts or sold the guts, and I've been lagging this case of the synthesizer around for me for years. And I had it sort of in my mind's eye that I wanted to make a coffee table out of it. And I found an old school desk, like from when we were at primary school, you know, those wooden flip-top things.
With the U steel legs.
You got it.
Yeah.
So I found that, put the U steel legs on it, and then I wanted to put a light bulb in it or something like that. And then our mutual friend Jez said, "I've got a good idea. I'll make something for you." And so I sent him some measurements, because where all of the faders and pots and buttons were, it's cut out of this giant die-cast faceplate.
Yeah.
And so he ended up buying all these LED lights from China and making this ginormous circuit board with all of these LED lights. And now you can plug it in, and it's got a whole bunch of different cycles. It cycles through different colours or goes up and down like a wave. And
doesn't play though, eh?
No.
Okay. What about the 808?
Dance music in that early part of the 80s was really changing.
The new musical movements, they come with new instruments.
Your music gotta sound hard and aggressive.
That machine just has a magic button on it.
It redefined music.
Techno-pop, house, your Miami bass, your Rio, your Valley funk, and even faster with the drum and bass.
Planet Rock sort of just did something else too. We had never heard anything like that before.
That bass had so much punch and so much force.
What's the bass line of Planet Rock? It's doom, 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 doom. There doesn't have to be a tune. There can just be noise.
Where was that found?
Oh, the 808 is technically...
How many of those do you reckon there are in New Zealand? This is a very particular niche podcast.
I don't know. I can't say I know too many people with 808s.
Yeah.
This one is on loan, so it's not mine.
Yeah.
But I've that's got a good story too, though.
Yeah, that's what I'm fishing for.
So
because I just love that. I like anyone out there who's a collector. I mean, not many people out listening will be synth collectors, but anyone who's got any collecting bone in their body loves the Holy Grail stories and the Foskey Fine stories.
Well, this is the owner is one of the sort of the pioneering techno producers of New Zealand, I guess, and it was in storage at his mum's house, and his mum had a house fire, and he had a whole bunch of synths in there, and they were assessed by their assessor and assessed as faulty and written off. So he got paid out, but then he brought them into me and said, "Oh, can you have a play with them to see if they are truly dead?" You know, they've been assessed by our insurance company's assessor, so it's not nothing dodgy. They've technically been assessed and written off. But they didn't want them, so we got them back. And I said, "Yeah, sure, no problem." And so I plugged it in, and it powered up okay. But their assessor couldn't get any sound out of it because they don't really know how to use an 808.
Cables into it. You're telling me you haven't put any cables in?
They put cables into the master outs, and the master outs weren't working, but it's got individual outs.
Right.
And individual outs are working fine. And so just resoldered the master outs, and boom, there we go, an 808 in working condition.
Do they have I've seen them come up on Trade Me and stuff. Do they is the value really abstract? Is it just what some schmo will fork out for one?
I mean, there's so few of them, and, you know, actually seeing one in real life and finding one, you know, it's that opportunity of buying one. And, yeah, I mean, this is my second one, so I had one previously. I bought an 808 909 at the same time from a guy that I knew, and I sold the 808 because, you know...
Before it really became caught on to people that... To get two, you must have, you know...
Yeah. I mean, I think I always wanted one, but it wasn't that practical for my setup at the time, and the genres, they're very genre-specific, I guess, as well. You know, I was more into the 909 house as opposed to the electro or hip-hop or whatever.
Yeah. So you've got a 909 as well?
Yeah.
Have you? I should be more observant when I'm at your place. So it was because of faulty transistors that those things made that sound they did. And I just wanted to ask before we move off them, when I learnt that story, why didn't they just produce more faulty transistors? Surely that's not hard to do.
Well,
is it hard to produce a specific fault that was making them do what they were doing?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it's an imperfection, and yeah, I mean, that's a good idea. But it was a byproduct. You know, they weren't specifically designed to fault, obviously.
Yeah.
And they just found by chance that this was the thing that was making, that was the stardust, if you like.
Yeah, but he knew by then, that company, he knew by then that was the stardust. I don't see why he didn't just get more bodgy transistors actually...
manufactured
and keep going.
Yeah.
Must have been a reason. Where were we in the 90s? I think you just cut your hair off.
Oh, right, yep. So I cut my hair off, started listening to drum and bass, and...
You don't strike me as a drum and bass guy at all now.
Well, drum and bass was kind of easy progression from heavy music, you know, I guess.
Yeah.
You know, it's the heavy metal of the dance world, I would say, maybe.
Some of it, yep.
And so I was, listening to drum and bass, playing some writing some weird, my version of drum and bass with like some, you know, drum machines and a TB303 and a synthesizer and a sampler, and cutting up some breaks and pretending to make drum and bass, I guess. And then, moved into a flat, Blair Street in Wellington, which at the time was a complex of
it was complex.
It was complex, but there was quite a lot of music in there, you know, both in upstairs and downstairs places, and started going to house gigs with my flatmates, and it's like, holy shit, this music's awesome. Once upon a time, I swore I'd never ever listen to dance music, because why would I listen to dance music when I have Led Zeppelin and Metallica and Danzig and... You know, it's just.
You know what it is? It's just I think we've all done something like that. I think it's just when you're younger. I can't speak for you, but you hold up. You're more tribal. You know, it's like a got to be cool kind of a thing. That's why it always weirds me out when I meet people like in their 40s and 50s who are still like that. Oh, I wouldn't listen to that shit. It's like, that's odd. You know, it's like, how did you not get past that kind of late teens mentality?
Yeah, I think. I mean. For me, music...
Imagine if you were still listening to the same 3 or 4 Metallica albums.
Yeah.
There's people around, man.
Yeah, there are.
You know, and good on them. I'm not, you know...
Yeah.
But it...
I think, I mean, music, for me, it's you know, I often talk about music, it's like a foggy window, you know, and then you run your finger down it and you can see the world through the finger stripe. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do.
And
I don't know how it relates to music yet, though.
Well, only listening to those 3 Metallica records is your foggy window, and then running your finger down it and seeing through is the whole wide world of music on the outside. And for me, then it's like the rabbit hole of disco and funk and soul and stuff like that.
How do you feel like that now with sometimes now with the internet, man? I just feel overwhelmed, or actually maybe more humble in a way. Like I realise that when I used to think I knew a lot, when I was buying a lot of records and stuff back then and stuff, it's still very pigeonholed in a lot of ways. There's so much music to learn about over a lifetime. You're even dictated by who's bringing in record stuff and stuff back with that old model. I gave you that. So this is like years old, but a lot of people have seen it. I gave you that Some Kind of Monster doco, and you watched it about 10 years after everyone else. What did you make of that whole scenario?
I thought it was amazing.
The guy in the cardigan who's like $20,000 a day to keep the band together. What happened to you guys?
Well, I mean, it's. I guess as far as the Fat Mannequin thing goes, we still remember it to this day. We were at the practice and mucking around with a whole bunch of different effects pedals for vocals and trying different things and different sounds and. There was some resistance from some members, and I think, hey, we were only like 20, 21, we were sort of young adults, I guess, and we were finding ourselves as well as finding each other, and being in a band for 5 years, it is like being, especially through that period of boys growing into young men.
Yeah.
A lot of testosterone, and it's like being in a marriage with 4 other pimply-faced teenage boys, really. I mean, it was great, and we...
That's what you see the bands like Shehad is like, you realise now they're all effective, they've lasted, and they're on the rocking chair on the stoop, like looking over that long-term marriage.
Yeah, and, I guess you're more understanding and forgiving of each other, and you just deal with it in a different way and have your life outside of the band, I guess.
How do you think relate that to the film? You saw what you'd been through in Fat Mannequin based on... You kind of saw that in the doco. Is that what you were getting at?
No, I think... what I was getting at is we saw it wasn't necessarily working, and we weren't going to flog a dead horse, I guess.
So you think they're flogging your dead horse these days? It's a very lucrative dead horse.
Oh, no, I think they're having fun again.
Yeah.
I think that movie just reconfirmed that Lars is an egg, and I had an absolute newfound respect for James, really.
Well, he's someone who you very much say, like, doing the rehab buzz and stuff really worked for him. But then I've joked to people that the vodka and cocaine James Hetfield, that was the most exciting music. But then you see him, he's got his whole face has changed in the last 10 years. And I don't mean physical health. I mean his scowl to kind of like, I've seen him do some pretty middle of the road TV appearances and stuff. It's kind of nice to see. Nice to see. Yeah. So where were we going with that? From Some Kind of Monster, we were talking about the dance music thing. Then you had a brief spell as a successful New Zealand production duo alongside Cuffy.
Yeah. And that sort of happened. I mean, he lived at Blair Street. He lived downstairs, but had a studio upstairs where I was. And so through the wall from my studio, he had his studio. And we sort of talked about music, and we're going to the same sort of gigs, really. And just sort of started putting all the gear together and fumbling around with some tracks, and I guess the early stuff was sort of quite techy, and lots of synthesizers and quite driving. And
much computer involved then, or mainly outboard gear?
Well, it was all hardware, synthesizers and drum machines, but it was sequenced by a computer.
Yeah.
And then sort of as we evolved and got more into sort of house sample orientated, house disco orientated house and stuff like that. And we were fortunate enough to have half a dozen vinyl releases, and it was great. And we were really dedicated to it. We would do studio, and that's what we call it. no, I can't go out on a date tonight. I've got studio sort of thing, you know.
Yeah.
And we were doing, 3 or 4 nights a week.
Wow. And like long stints, like good 8-hour stints?
No, this was all after work. So, sort of 6 till 9, 6 till 10, 4 or 5 nights a week. And then, then I started DJing in 99. So, working full-time job in the studio, that amount of time, as well as DJing every Saturday. It was sort of eat, sleep, breathe music, really. It was great.
Wow, 12 hours downtime a week. So with vinyl releases, do you like to... Do you see anything back for them aside from sort of kudos and spreading your name and stuff? Like, were you signed to a label overseas or something?
Well, we did... the first vinyl release we did was for Freak Records. And that was sort of...
they were like a breakbeaty kind of a label, weren't they? Didn't they have Freak Nasty on them? Or is that... Oh, no, Freak's that local New Zealand house label.
Yeah. So I think we did a double A-side with Pinau on one side and us on the other. And our track was sort of still quite techie, really. And then we got in with the COG guys in the House Imprint, Reliable Records. And they released the Sly Boom EP, and that had 19 Cent Trumpet on it. And that 19 Cent Trumpet, that was the big surprise, really, because that was sort of the B-side.
It's always about the B-side, Leon.
And Sly Boom was the A-side, and everybody loved the B-side. And we had that was with Toby Lang on trumpet from Fat Freddy's, and that was great. It really took us by surprise.
Do you know Pinau is still going?
Yeah.
I wonder what they make these days. Still good old-fashioned house music?
Well, I think one half of them is Empire in the Sun, isn't it? Empire of the Sun.
Is that a drum and bass? That's a drum and bass.
No, they were those two guys who... I can't remember what the song was that had such an impact on me. I can't remember.
Whistler, Shazam it. So today because obviously, nerd out about gear again, big part of your life is deciding on what gear comes into your shops in New Zealand. How do you think production's changed, man? Like I guess kids coming in these days and stuff. Do you think it's necessarily easier, or do you it's still the same fundamental musical skills? Because I thought about I bought this box recently, and I've just been pondering that.
Well, I think it all started in the late 90s, really. And
what did?
It being easier to write electronic music with propeller head Reason software.
Yeah.
And
was that the... I was going to say game changer. Was that the game changer, was it?
Well, it was. Rebirth, which I had, your 808 and 303s in it, and then Reason came out. And I think Reason it's hugely influential. However, it made it easier, which is good and bad. It effectively flooded the world of really substandard electronic music because it was easier to make, but that wasn't necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
I think previously, and this is going to sound elitist, it doesn't mean to, but when you were making electronic music with synthesizers and drum machines and real hardware, you actually had to have a bit of skill and nous to be able to do it.
And you had to be particularly dedicated, I guess, as well.
Yeah.
I listened to an interview with Photech really recently, and it just struck me because I didn't really think about that sort of thing back then. I just go, that sounds good, but what he talked about going through to make some of those records, I'm like, man. But you know what the flip side is? Speaking of this wee music making box I bought the other day, the flip side is, I guess, if you got someone has got a talent or got an ear or whatever. Sometimes, last time I was seriously fooling around with trying to make music about over 10 years ago now, I'd get really caught up on kind of settings and so on. And there is something about, some might call it cheating, there is something about just going into those banks and all your effects and everything are set and ready to go, and you can just bash something out. Are you by the way, are you that attuned to it that you could pick, oh, that's a Reason record, oh, that's a Machine record, oh, that's a, can you sometimes pick what hardware or software's made stuff?
I think we're at a time where there are a lot of similar sound banks and a lot of people using the same samples.
I thought about that, yeah.
And that's why it's always great to create your own samples. And I guess, talking about Reason and a whole bunch of substandard music, I mean, there's a lot of really good music.
Oh, no, totally,
but also, music, it should be easy to make music. Because
that's what I was meaning. That was my counter,
Yeah, and I think if you've got something in your head, you should be able to get it out, and you shouldn't have to fight technology to get it out. Or
do the other thing I do where I get so obsessed with the perfect latency and hardware setup and da-da-da-da, I'd spend X amount of hours on forums and then 20 minutes actually going boop, boop, boop.
Yeah, and I mean, there's so much technology. If you're working with technology, I mean, for me, I love my job, but it's a double-edged sword because I'm dealing with gear all day and dealing with other people's music. That sometimes last thing I want to do is go home, look at a computer.
Yeah.
So I kind of gone full circle again, where when I want to get in the zone, I'll go in and just turn on my drum machines and synthesizers and play with them. There's not a computer in the studio that
just jam out ideas.
Yeah.
Like when I messaged you and said I wanted a machine to kind of bash out drums on and stuff.
Yeah.
I also reckon that whatever iteration of music making technology we're at affects styles and kind of genres as well. Because I was thinking about that the other day, how with all this sort of MPC born, lovely tactile buttons on a box thing, I think that's where trap came from. It feels like that. I can see someone sitting there bashing out an idea with their fingers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, I mean, I think, if you think about history of electronic music, the 808 and the Akai MPC arguably would be some of the most influential pieces of gear for music, electronic music, full stop, really.
Have you played with the new Akai?
Yeah, it's great. It's very, very cool. And, fortunate enough to have owned a number of MPCs over my time, and they've done it really well. It's taking it to the next step, but there's some significant. They've done the research for the old original MPC user base and users, and it's got a lot of the original workflow from this.
And so the idea is principally that it's still a completely standalone box, no laptop needed, and so on, right?
Yeah, now it's got a computer in it, really. So there's just so much you can do with it. It's pretty damn cool. But but it's the whole standalone thing, not looking at a computer.
Yeah.
It's all in one. It's and I really like that. And I think this is something that I really enjoyed with hardware samplers like the MPC or the SP 1200 is it's creativity through limitations as well.
Yeah. Something from the Art of Nothing, I think, isn't that the name of the hip hop film that talks about that? I was a kid. He's not a kid now, and he was only a kid by age back then. A guy, Jeremy, who used to wash dishes when I first got back to New Zealand, and I was doing hospital work for a while there. What does he call himself? He ended up going on Chris Cox's show on Georgia bit with his productions. Anyway, he'd brought an old MU, the ones with were they 2-second sample times or something? But one of the ones where you make everything just with that tiny little blue readout. Mm-hmm. Am I talking? Is that something that exists? Yeah. And he was making amazing tunes, and that's 2007 or 8. So I think he'd purposely brought that old technology to sort of embrace that style of making. What do he call himself? I'm sure you would have heard his music. Never mind. It'll come to me. So with Machine, I was thinking about that. I want to get it from... I want to learn how to use it without having to be with the mouse and the screen all the time. I think that's what it's about, right?
Yeah. I mean, it's... Yeah, having the screens on it and stuff like that, it's so you can just load up your sounds and be able to... write in such a way that you're not using your eyes to write music, you're using your ears,
and your hands,
and you go by feel, and you work on arrangements of how it feels and flows. Like DJing, you know when you should be mixing in or whatever, or the track flows well. Whereas if you're looking at a computer screen, it's that linear left to right thing people are so used to, and
I think that's why I still like not getting too deep into something like Scratch when I DJ and just just still going to turntables and headphones where I can, even using that system, because that's right. You kind of, but again, maybe that's old man talk. I've seen some pretty amazing stuff happen at the other end. Do you think some people overbuy on the kit these days? I once went to Base FM and I had a show, and the guy before me, bless him, had like, I don't know, $800 Concord head shells. He had Novation dice on each turntable. He had brand new fluorescent purple Serato discs. He had a little stand for his SL4 box or whatever it was. He basically assembled about $4,000 or $5,000 worth of record playing kit while I finished my show, and then he went to start his and no signal came out, so I put another record on.
That's awesome. Oh, yeah.
I suppose it's not in your business interest to say, no, people never buy too much stuff.
No. I mean, we call it GAS, gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
And you get a fever for it. But it's the same with buying records. You get the fever for, gotta have these new records.
Or drums or guitars or anything. You can buy as much as you want, can't you?
Yeah. And I mean, people come in and ask, what should I buy? And it's like, buy one thing and learn it to the full extent of capabilities of that piece of one gear.
Yeah.
Learn it inside and out. And because chances are you might be able to do a lot of what you want to do with that one piece of gear. And then you move on, like synthesizers sort of thing. And then you move on to something else,
I think my uncle said to me once, I was doing, again, me joking, because it was a joke about a serious thing, where I was just getting caught up in the minutiae of setup and so on. He was like, is it making noise? I was like, yes. He goes, is it good noise? I was like, yes. He goes, just keep making noise with it. And then, come and get the next thing.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I don't listen to my own advice, to be honest, because I've got bunches.
But you're a collector.
Well, I don't. As long as I'm using it, I think I'd rather it be.
But the vintage stuff's a little different, man.
Yeah. I can't really say. I've been burned. I think my first ever synthesizer I had bought two of them, a Juno 60 and an SH101 at the same time, and the Juno 60 I sold and regretted it forever.
Yeah,
and I finally found another one last year, and I've reunited with my favourite synthesizer, and I'm never ever going to sell it.
From overseas or
no, from
locally?
Yeah, from locally, from another synth.
Okay, so it's still from because that's the thing. In this pinball world that I'm in, I used to think, I could look for a pinball on Trade Me one day and there'd be equal, fair competition for that pinball. But just like your synth mafia, now I've met the pinball mafia. It's like they know everything that's on every trading site at all times. They talk about it. They laugh at what some member of the public pays for something, and you kind of realise, the internet's really changed that, eh? The idea of going through the trading paper and being the first one out there on what did it used to be? Thursday morning.
Yeah.
Is kind of a limited thing now. So as part of your work, man, you go over and this is the bit of your. Well, I don't know much about your job really, but the bit that it's always kind of fascinated me is that. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you go over to trade shows and you look at every major music company's releases for that year. This is hardware, folks, not recorded music releases, and you decide what the shop's going to stock, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we've got the distribution rights for a whole bunch of different brands through our wholesale companies, all through retail, and sort of look after it all for my categories. And we'll go through and check out all the new products from these brands, and most of the time they're great, and we bring them in.
But that's what I was going to ask about. Is obviously without naming companies, whatever. Have you ever being presented with something that's like completely hilarious and Heath Robinson and it'll never take off? Like Too Ambitious. Can you think of anything off the cuff? Like a record player with a muffin maker or something, or
yeah, there was this.
Well done. I thought I might stop dead there.
There was this sort of a DJ controller which looked like the Millennium Falcon, and it was made by a keyboard company in conjunction with a Japanese DJ manufacturer who's no longer in business.
Yeah.
And it was like, check out this thing, and it was a real conceptual product. And there's a lot of really conceptual products out there, and
Some I'm sure which are amazing, others of which are like, oh boy.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it takes a couple of years for these ideas to come to market as well. So someone's been working on that Millennium Falcon-shaped controller for 2 years, and they haven't once asked themselves whether they should or not. So there's been some clangers.
So why is it a clanger? Just because it was ridiculous looking?
It wasn't really a serious professional product. It was kind of tapping into the consumer electronic market.
Right.
It just didn't really know where it was going to be.
Where it was.
And so it had no market for us, really. But it was too expensive for it to be a $99 product you might find in some...
yeah, I know what you mean. And surplustronics.
You got it. And, I mean, there's I think most brands have their successes and most brands have their products which aren't as successful. There's an expectation for us to carry all of the products that our brands offer, and we try our best to do that.
I'm not in the industry, so I can mention a company name because I thought it was a funny story. I used to wonder I don't know about now, but I used to wonder in the early 2000s, like who was okaying Newmark's gear before it got sent to market, because they'd have these great conceptual ideas, and it would be like, if you just got a few more people in the room, it's been a few more months. And the one I particularly remember is they were quite pioneering with it. I don't think there are many others around. They released a little DJ rig where you'd sounds obsolete now because it is. You'd put your iPod in the dock. You remember those?
Yeah.
Well, the first one had 2 docks.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm like, who buys two iPods to use a product?
Yeah. The iDJ, I think it was called. And yeah. Interesting little device. They did
another one with 1 dock, and I'm like, well done.
Yeah.
You see, if you'd left it a little while, someone would have gone, what about if we had 1 dock?
Yeah, I mean, and that's an interesting one. A lot of companies have chased that. iOS.
I guess there's probably a race. There's probably a race to release, isn't there? In terms of it's like clothing seasons or whatever. Maybe is that why they. No, I don't mean that company. I mean companies in general rush to.
Well, I think, if they just look at it and go, well, there's, I don't know, 8 million iPhones sold every year, and if we can sell a device which connects to iPhones and get 1% of that, we're going to do pretty well.
iPods, yeah.
iPods, or iPhones, because there's, you get an app on your iPhone and you can have a DJ controller which controls your iPhone these days as well.
Do you think that's a real design, sort of success story these days, where what the hell is still going to be compatible with this product in a year? Do you see what I'm meaning? Like, where are the plugs on the computers going to go? Where is this? Where is that? There must be all of that too. Why can't they all just unify, man?
Well, I think the industry has certainly had a lot of products and technology dictated to them by Apple,
Yeah.
And everyone's pretty nervous about it. And for your device to be Apple compatible, you got to pay Apple to approve it. And there's a whole big long waiting list, and it's
Wow, Apple are running the world, man. That's pretty amazing. So you actually have to. You don't have to do that with PC gear. You have to pay Apple, the company.
I believe so, for it to be certified. Yeah, yeah. That's crazy, and yeah. But that's what happens when you're a market leader, I guess, and of a platform, for computer recording stuff. We'll get
off the gear thing in a sec. But what do you reckon of this very broad, but of roughly this era? What's going to end up the Junos or the Fender Rhodes or the 1200s of this time?
Well, there's a real resurgence towards hardware, and people were making hardware synthesizers and hardware drum machines again, and because it's cheaper to make and the technology is arguably better, it means there's a whole new generation of producers who can own this gear, like Roland creating all of their boutique range, which are going back to their past and coming out with new versions of the 808 and the 909. That's a funny one because there's a whole generation of producers who have got a bunch of 808 sample packs and using it in whatever software, but wouldn't know an 808 if they found one in a junk store for $1.
So has it got transistors in it, or some sort of modern fandangled?
Yeah, it's analog circuit behaviour, so it's modelling.
It's an emulator.
Yeah, it's an emulator. Yeah. But it sounds amazing and just as good. I've done comparisons with these new devices with the original thing, and they just sound different. You can't really say one's better or
So you're
not.
saying with all this new digital stuff that the emulators of the old stuff are going to be the classic stuff of this time? Is that what you're saying?
I think so, yeah.
So none of the digital stuff. Wow. Surely one of the Serato boxes will end up being a design classic or something. Or maybe there's just so many of them they won't actually be collectible.
Well, yeah, who knows? It's just whether... I think anything that can plug into a computer is a bit tricky, because unless you keep that computer of the day, it's going to be obsolete.
Yeah. I'll talk to you a little bit more about that off air in 20 minutes or so. Looking down there, thought about that. What do you do on the boards of the two music schools in Auckland? I don't really know what being on the board is about.
So it's
SAE and Mains?
Yeah, industry advisory capacity, really. Talking about emerging technology and offering suggestions and on what should be taught, really.
Wow.
So thinking about...
Well, how do you base it on who's coming to the shop and stuff, and what the kind of kids, unquote, quote unquote, are doing?
There's not so much that, it's more about market trends for technology. So there's like, I guess, network audio is a prime example. Being able to have a studio in a 5-story building where you plug in all of the interfaces through an Ethernet cable, and you could have a band on the 5th floor ported down into the control room in the 1st floor. I mean...
It doesn't sound very social.
Oh, yeah, well, then you can have the big screens and the camera
you
links.
get connected by screens.
No, but it's sort of all of that emerging technology, when it's sort of my role on the board to give them the heads up on new technology so they can incorporate it into their teachings, really.
Shit, so between the schools and Rock Shop, like, you really can't make the wrong calls, eh? I bought in 43 of these Millennium Falcon controllers, guys. Mains, you should use these. Course next year.
Oh, and at the end of the day...
3 of these Numark iPod docks.
I'm very realistic about stuff as well, and, at the end of the day, for me, it's just making sure that, all the people are making music and are using the right gear for them, as opposed to me pushing the XY widget.
I don't mean pushing it, but I'm meaning that you can't risk, given that, I suppose that's why you're doing the job, you're doing it so long, you can't give the wrong advice or bring the wrong thing in.
Yeah.
Has there been any clangers that have come in? Like 50 of them have sat on the shelf? I will not admit defeat.
I think I might have blocked them out of my memory. I think there's always been clangers, taken a while to get rid of or whatever. There's some questionable drum machines which came out a few years ago which looked fantastic, but in practice just weren't all that flash. But then, the 808 was a commercial failure, and maybe the joke's on me, these shitty drum machines, which I think are shitty, will be worth $3,000 in 20 years' time.
So how did the disco thing happen, man? Just like it's very, you sort of from the band to drum and bass, and now, was there a love of? Because I've looked back and I totally went through my metal hard rock stage at probably mainly 12 years to 17 years old or whatever. But when I actually think back, I had relatives with reasonably funky record collections, like not straight down the line rock. Did you have that music around when you were a kid, or is that sort of a delicacy discovered later in life? Because that really is your thing now, eh?
Yeah. No, I mean, Dad's records, were a strong influence on me, and there was some Prince in there, and some Shaka Khan, and a few things like that. But no, nothing that I would sort of necessarily call disco, really. And I think from house,
I like the gear we talked about. I don't think there would have been a huge amount of deep disco records in New Zealand the first time around. We just weren't that sort of nation, eh? Yeah, don't you think?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I think, house music, was really formed on disco. That was where it all came from, funk, soul and disco. And if you don't like funk, soul and disco, you like house. It's, for me, it was sort of researching, where did that loop come from? Where did that sound come from?
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about the bass line. It's sort of all funky, and it's just going down the rabbit hole of doing the research. And And I was still an avid record collector and reading, this bass player played on this album. Oh, he also played on this one, or this is the drummer or the producer, and linking them all together like this, like a twister plot book.
I think I've really lost that in the last years, and it's podcasts that have done it. I've turned into like a 60-plus-year-old man who listens to AM radio in the corner of his room. I just listen to talking. I need to get back to that. How do you produce convincing disco without a band these days? That's must be an art form, getting that organic, that sound, that particular sound.
Yeah, I mean that's something that I've been thinking about, because that's sort of the next project that I want to do. Really,
that's what I was thinking. Yeah,
yeah, because I've sort of been out of the loop as far as production goes for a few years, because I've had other things to deal with closer to home, and I've kind of got this vision of what would really be cool to write some music with real instruments, kind of like what Daft Punk did.
Well,
I guess.
You've got the studio experience with humans as well. That makes sense.
Yeah. And just getting some session players in and some friends to write some music like that way, I think, and recreate, house music, or and then refine down to funk and disco and stuff. And people like Joey Negro, he's doing it with the Sunburst Band. There's a few people doing it. And I mean that for me would be the absolute dream project, because I'm an engineer, and that's where I started, being an audio engineer. And
well, now I mean we've dotted through very vaguely through your music playing history, and it seems like everything you've done kind of combining. I think it's a great idea. When are you going to start?
Wow, it's tomorrow. No, I think what I've found that I need to brew on something. Brew on it and get some influences and ideas, and so when it comes time to execute it, then I've thought through and then can do it. And I'm just sort of in the brewing stage. I guess I'm percolating.
Percolating. It's time for the percolator. What else have I got here? Oh yeah, your brief. I don't know if this I might edit this out later. Of the four internet traces of you, there's an article and stuff about your hearing. How did the press find you about that?
Ah, right. I can't remember how that came about. It was for the Hearing Association. I think they were doing an awareness week, and I've got tinnitus, and I've had tinnitus since I was 17 or 18 years old. I remember it, actually. It was at Barbadega. We had a gig there, and it was one night I forgot my earplugs, and our drummer had some new Zildjian K custom cymbals.
Yeah, it's those high short bursts.
Yeah, and standing on a very small stage with a Marshall, Marshall half stack, and being irresponsible at a young age with my hearing. And I've got tinnitus.
Tinnitus. Tinnitus.
You reckon one night ruined it?
Well, that was the one night where I definitely remember hearing loss or
do you think
damage.
that people might be predisposed to it? Because I've been in some pretty loud spaces, man.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because like you and Sean Deans are two people that are unfortunately sort of struck by it, and I don't see anything that you guys have done much different to the rest of us.
Well, I mean, my right ear is worse than my left ear, and that's my ear where my Marshall was, and also for DJing. Yeah, it's my monitor ear.
I didn't realise it still affects you. So you hear wee a lot of the time. Well, you probably didn't hear anything then because you hear it all the time.
Multiple frequencies in different different frequencies in different ears, but also different heights. So
altitude affects it.
No. Different. No. So it's weird. Like I guess if you're thinking of a stereo field, left and right, and you go up, from. So say if you thought you heard a sound coming from your feet or from up here, sort of thing, different frequencies, different tones will be from here, from up high or different or low, depending on the different ears. It's all very
maddening.
I don't notice it. I'm fortunate where it doesn't really bug me. I hear it at night, and if I have too much caffeine or I'm tired or alcohol can make it louder.
Because you also hear a hum in Auckland that not everyone hears, eh?
Yeah, it's the it's the resonance of the volcanic cavities, I'm sure of it.
You're serious, are you?
Yeah. I thought I was a sort of a tinfoil head for a while. And it even got to the stage in my neighbourhood where I was going to get up in the middle of the night because it was worse at night with some proper recording microphones and some headphones. But I thought
that's total crazy. I'm gonna prove it to you guys.
That's right.
I'm gonna prove it.
But then I thought that my neighbours would probably call the cops on me or something.
Well, you need to move further away from the mountain.
I don't know. It's just on in some. It doesn't happen all the time, and
but when you go on the internet, there's a bunch of you, right?
Yeah. And it's not just Auckland. There's some other cities around the world,
right? Where they hear it,
yeah.
So, yeah.
Thanks, man. Yeah, on the tinfoil head.
I just liked how I heard about it and went, what? And it was like, there's a bunch of them on the internet. That's lovely.
Yeah. I'll never forget the day where I actually started to, well, no, I think I found it by accident on the internet. I wasn't looking up,
So had you talked to anyone about it at that point, or you just keeping it quiet?
No, I was definitely keeping it quiet.
But how do you know it's the volcanoes now? Oh,
no, that was just someone's theory. Because there's so much noise and movement in Auckland, and there's the old lava channels and stuff like that. It's a whole lot of it's a volcanic plateau, right? And there's a whole bunch of chambers underneath Auckland.
I had no idea. Like empty chambers.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, like and caves, lots of caves. It's like Takaka Hill. That resonates as well.
Takaka Hill was that's a special spot. My understanding there is different to holes and what have you. It's basically a large crystal, with grass on it, which is pretty amazing in itself. What does it sound like?
The Auckland
noise.
It's a really low level hum,
like a power station.
Yeah, but it's sort of sub bass as well. It's quite amazing, and
it's only at night.
Well, that's when it's
when it's quiet.
Quiet. There's less ambient noise.
It sounds a bit Blade Runner and a bit freaky, the noise.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's like I remember when I first moved to Auckland, moved into a place and had a bath, and I thought, oh, sweet, I'm going to lie there and have a bath, and it's like, fuck, the city's really noisy. How can you enjoy your bath?
I got the volcano rumble.
It's just, I think a big city has noise.
So Booger used to kick over your glue bucket, and then we went to the Head Like a Hole film.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're a busy man. I don't know if you got time to listen to. I was lucky enough to talk to Julian. He was hard. If anyone gets this across to him, before I say this, there's a caveat with this. He was hard work. But I'm more meaning that I just was struck by a guy who, the way I saw it, still has quite a few months or perhaps even years of defragging after that project. Because what he's actually done on his own, when I really thought about it, the people he was dealing with, his first feature film, the level he got it to, is quite spectacular, right?
Yeah.
What did you think?
I thought it was amazing. It was brutal. What I really liked about it, I sort of saw it as two movies. I saw it as a movie about a band and self-destruction and so forth, but I also saw it as almost the artistic side of it from a filmmaker's point of view was all of this amazing footage of New Zealand on the road, and all of the we were touring at that same sort of time, and I mean even Gerald's van, the Sticky Fingers van that they were touring to Mountain Rock in, and shots of Wellington and Mountain Rock and some beautiful New Zealand scenery of them down in the South Island. That was sort of the sub. That was a second story in it.
I'm with you, and there's like a dearth of footage. There's like very little footage from that era of us growing up, and I really like that in a lot of ways. Mainly some of the things I got up to, but also because when you do see that footage, you're like, wow, especially moving image. How many people had a camera that took kind of moving image stuff then?
Yeah.
And I don't know, like as I say, I dealing with those temperaments and so on, is almost the fact, Head Like a Hole in the music was a sort of not a cameo, but very much a sub-character of the film.
I mean, for me, I was a huge Head Like a Hole fan when I was at high school, and I remember going to the Fish Across Face launch party at the building in Wellington, and I was
all of us then as well. Like, I don't know about you, but I was pretty green, man. So just to be going to those sort of things, there's probably people in the crowd then that were only like 3 or 4 years older who felt like adult musician crowd type. It was quite a vibrant kind of non-licensed venue scene in Wellington then. It's good seeing a little taste of that as well. I've got to give you that record back. And with that, we might be nearly done, man. Do you think we talked too much boffiny, geary, music-y stuff?
I don't know. I mean, there is some boffiny stuff, but that's kind of part of it, I think.
Yeah. Well, we can stop now. We've done an hour.
Cool. Yeah.
Shout out to little Ray Ray.